We're on the second to last line. Rabbi Yossi Shama. Everybody see it? Second to last line on Tezayin base. Rabbi Yossi Shama. Rabbi Yossi heard the Asos email about that his mother was coming to Batra. Now Batra is out in Chutz La'aretz, and Rabbi Yasa was from Bavel. He was studying in Eretz Yisrael. And he heard his mother was coming to Batra on her way to come visit him in Eretz Yisrael. So Rabbi Yasa or Rabbi Yasi, in the Babli, asked his Rabbi Yochanan, can I go to Chutz La'aretz in order to greet her? In other words, can I go to Batra in order to greet my mother? So so he said to him, it depends. If you're going because your mother is in danger, walking on her own, so that's why you're going to Chutz La'aretz in order to greet her, say, then go out. Obviously, it's Pekuach Nefesh. If you're just doing it because of the honor of Kibud Avayim, which is only a mitzvah, and you're there. I don't know if there's a heter. I don't know if you're allowed to go to Chutz La'aretz for that purpose. Rabbi Yasa was obviously a Kohen, because if he wasn't a Kohen, there would be no problem. So Rabbi Yasa kept on bothering Rabbi Yochanan and asked him, can I go? V'amar, finally Rabbi Yochanan said, if you want to go, if you decide to go, Tava b'shalom, at least come back in peace. Now, Rabbi Yochanan, it seems, was afraid that Rabbi Yasa was going to leave and not come back. He's going to stay in Bavel. Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak, Odi Tzrichel Rabbi Yochanan.
By the way, that last line was not in here.
Yeah.
Oh, you don't have that whole line?
No, that's where it was.
Okay. So you have Rabbi Shmuel bar Yitzchak?
Oh, yeah, that we have.
Okay. Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak, Odi Tzrichel Rabbi Yochanan. You still need, it's still a question. Not normally tzarich means that you need, but in the Yerushalmi tzricha means it's sofek, right? We said the word tzricha very often appears in lieu of the word teku. So Odi tzricha Rabbi Yochanan means still a question by Rabbi Yochanan what the issue is. Shama Rabbi Lezer heard this conversation, and he said, "V'amar ein lecha reshus gedolah mizu." By virtue of the fact that Rabbi Yochanan blessed Rabbi Yasa.
What it is the line switched back and forth. That's what happened.
Okay.
They're all switched?
Yeah.
So, so he switched the whole lines, right? Yeah. So he said, Shama Rabbi Lezer, Ravama, he said, Ein Chorshus Glom Mizu, since he gave him a bracha that clearly indicates that he was giving him that he was saying it's permissible to go. Otherwise, he wouldn't give him a bracha. Hashim ben Lakish showed Rabbi Chanina. Hashim ben Lakish asked Rabbi Chanina, Hakone ba'amon u'moav ma'u. What's the halach of somebody who buys land in the area of Ammon or Moav? Now, this isn't talking about in terms of Trumas U'Maisris. Is Yechayiv take Trumas U'Maisris off? Now, Ammon or Moav, if you look in your maps, are more or less what?
It's past. It's over.
Yeah, it's over. It's modern day Jordan. The shiur is if you buy stuff there, are you chayiv in Trumas U'Maisris? Now, why is this an issue? Or you'd say it's simply over the line. So it says more Amalei. So he said, "Ani lo shmati min Rabbi Chia Gadol." I didn't hear this from Rabbi Chia the Great himself. El mi Parshas Ashkelon v'lachutz. But I did hear that that which was on Ashkelon, on the border with Parshas Ashkelon. Parshas Ashkelon is the last city in the land of Israel, and that is on map Gimel. Take a look at map Gimel. In the southwest corner of Eretz Yisrael, you see Parshas Ashkelon right near Ashkelon. Everybody see that? It's in little letters. So I heard over there, that Parshas Ashkelon and westerly of there is exempt from Trumas U'Maisris. So the Kasha, and so now that's the whole conversation is recorded. Now the Gemara says, Vakasha, this is difficult. To Sholei Ador, he asked him, on Ammon U'Moav, V'yu Megiv Le'Ador. And he's answering what we heard on Parshas Ashkelon. What good does it do? They're crossed wires here. They're not communicating, right? Ella begin so it says what I tell you. El begin the lace Rabbi China Amar Milsad Lo Shoma Min Yamoy. The truth is, you're right. Rabbi China didn't answer but nonetheless, he didn't want to. And the reason, the reason Rabbi China didn't answer is because he never said anything that he didn't hear from his Rebbeim. The late Rabbi China Amar, Rabbi China never said Milsa, a word, Lo Shama Min Yamoy, which he had not previously heard in his lifetime. However, on the other hand, begin to lo mifikte rekon, since he didn't want to completely say no answer whatsoever, so begin kach shol le hada umegiv le hada. That's why we had this strange dialogue where he asked about Ammon U'Moav and he answered about Parshas Ashkelon. Now, Gemara doesn't address the core question of Ammon U'Moav. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. In the meantime, we get diverted. Rabbi Shimon Lakish Ozel Batra. Rabbi Shimon Lakish went to Batra. Now, Batra, if you take a look on map Gimel, is way down southeast. As you would say, Sela, that's Petra, and right south there is Batra. See that? So he went to Batra. Aslan Gabe. So the inhabitants of Batra, who the viceroys, there were Jews living there at the time, came to him. Amalei, and they said to him that Chamelon, find for us Bar Nash, an individual Dorish, who can darsh of us, Dayan, who will judge our cases, Soifer, who will write a Sefer Torah, Chazan will be the Shamish in Shul, Vavi Kotzochan be the jack of all our trades. What? Undo windows, yeah. Chamachad Bavli. So he found a certain Babylonian. When Rish Lakish went back there to Israel, found a certain Babylonian. Amar Lei, so he said to this Babylonian, Chamis loch chad asar tav. I found you a good stellar, a good place to be. Umani, and which one is it? Batra. Asal Gabi Rabbi Yochanan. So this Babylonian came to Rabbi Yochanan and asked permission to go. Amar Lei, so he said, yeah, go. Mi Bavel Bavel. Now, if you're from Bavel, you can go live in another area in Chutz La'aretz. What difference does it make? Amar Rabbi Yaakov bar Rabba. Min mat Amar Rabbi Yochanan min Bavel above, and that Rabbi Yochanan said from Bavel to Bavel. Hada Amra. From this we conclude that Hakaina Sham Eno Mischayev. That you buy land there, that you're not chayim in Trumas and Meisers. Says more of a chitzor. Wait a minute. Chitzor Eno also leilach l'sham. That's not true. Tzor, you're not allowed to go there, right? It's considered to be chutz la'aretz. Tzor is Tyre, on the northern coast of the land of Israel, right? If somebody who goes there, is he not chayim in Trumas and Meisers? In other words, they were guys that Trumas and Meisers to Rabbanan on the entire vicinity surrounding the land of Israel. So since that's the case, Tzor is chayim in Trumas and Meisers.
Tzor was part.
It's a direct extension of the coast. Well, this maybe, as you'd say, is Eber Yarden, or on the other side of the Dead Sea.
Well,
maybe that's a natural demarcation.
It could be. You're asking a stronger question. Well, ask it again.
I never said. Isn't it conquered by the?
By the.
I can't tell. Was this kibush only Mitzrayim?
Only Mitzrayim. If you look, the more it's going to pick up on that, because if you look at map, which map is that? Aleph. If you look at map Aleph, then Tzor is part of the Ole Mitzrayim area. Okay, it's in inside the Ole Mitzrayim area. So right, it's south of Dalet, right? Mm-hmm. The Gemara is going to ask that. So, but in any event, the Gemara is saying, what was the Havamina that Batra should be chayim in Trumas and Meisers? Because Tzor is chayim in Trumas and Meisers. Ashkach Tani. So they found the bride who had said, no, that, don't worry. Batra is for sure exempt from Trumas and Meisers. What does the bride say? Now you have Simon, right? The word Simon or the word Samuch? Simon, yeah. You have actually, it's a typo. Should be Samuch la'Ammon Moav ul Eretz Mitzrayim, adjacent to Ammon and to Moav and to the land of Egypt. Shtei arotzos. There are only two lands. Achas ne'acheles v'achas ne'avedes. There are two choices. Either it is permitted to eat the fruit there because they don't have Kedusha Shevi'is, and you're allowed to work there in Shemitah. V'achas, and there's, or it's should be lo ne'acheles v'lo ne'avedes. There's land which you cannot eat, nor because there's Kedusha Shevi'is, nor Kedushas, nor can you work. So there are only two choices. In the south and in the east, there are only two choices. Either it's Eretz Yisrael or it's Chutz La'aretz. If it's Eretz Yisrael, you're not allowed to work it during Shemitah, and the fruit of Shemitah is Kedusha Shevi'is. If it's Chutz La'aretz, you're allowed to work it during Shemitah, and the fruit which grows there is not Kedusha Shevi'is. However, that's why if either Batzer is Eretz Yisrael or Chutz La'aretz, and if it's Chutz La'aretz, there's no Trumas U'Maasros. As opposed to Tzor, because Tzor is in Zone B.
And Tzor, even though it's that's in the area where you're not allowed to work, but the fruit has no Kedusha Shevi'is. And therefore, by extension, Trumas and Maasros there are applicable to Rabbanan, as opposed to in the south by Basra.
So it would be fair to say that every place where there's a Trumas Maisaris to Rabbanan, there is an Isur Shevi'is.
Mm-hmm.
So Syria...
That would be fair to say. Yeah, that's Trumas and Maisaris to Rabbanan, and an Isur Shevi'is to work the land. Yes. Okay? Says the Gemara, not Susita. Sita is Eretz Tov. Eretz Tov is exempt from Trumas and Maisaris, even the Rabbanan. Yeah, even only Mitzrayim didn't conquer Susita. I mean, they did, but they didn't sanctify it. That's what I learned yesterday. That's Eretz Tov, which at the time of Yiftach already is identified as being exempt from Trumas and Maisaris. It's like Beit Shan. That's in map Bays. That whole area there, it seems, extending from Eretz Tov in the north to Beit Shan in the south, that whole section around the Jordan and Kinneret rivers was all exempt, even though it was conquered already by Olam Mitzrayim and conquered again by Olam Bavel. It was never Chayiv in Trumas and Maisaros nor in Shemitah.
Even Rabbanan.
Even Rabbanan. Yeah. It's a tremendous chiddush, a shocking concept, but that's what we said. Okay? So says the Gemara, sorry, Rabbi Yochanan Meimer. Rabbi Yochanan wanted to say, as Betzer Bar Midbar Ksiv. It's obvious that Batzer's and Chutz La'aretz. It says Betzer is by it says Betzer. That was one of the Orei Miklot. Is in the Midbar, and that's part of Eretz Yisrael. V'lo Batzra, and it should be V'lo Batzra, not Batzra. You take a look, the map makes it clear. In map Gimel, you have Betzer, which is just inside the southwest boundary of Eretz Yisrael, and Batzra, which is outside. So the Rabbi Yochanan knew Betzer and Batzra are two different cities. What messed up Reish Lakish is the Sava Rabbi Shirin ben Lakish, Meimar Rabbi Shirin ben Lakish thought Betzer, Hainu, Batzra. He was confused. That's why he came back and asked Rabbi Yochanan. He thought maybe Betzer and Batzra are the same city, and therefore was in Eretz Yisrael.
It's like Ramla and Ramallah.
Right.
I have the same problem in Poland. There's a town, Chechanovich and Chechanovice. Far apart.
Okay. Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Nachman, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Shol Rabbi Chanina asked Rabbi Chanina. Are you joining us? I have a spare Gemara.
So, just curious, we left that Sur is still...
Sur is Eretz Avim, but it's Chayiv in Shvi'is. It's Chayiv in Shvi'is, and it's Chayiv in Trumas Maisaros Rabbanan. Amar Yitzchak Bar Nachman, do you want to show him the place?
Yeah.
Amar Yitzchak Bar Nachman. Yitzchak now said, Shimon Lakish Shal Rabbi Chanina. Shimon Lakish asked Rabbi Chanina. Same question we had before. We never really addressed it. Hakoina ba'Ammon u'Moav mao. If somebody buys land in Ammon u'Moav, what's the status of that land? Now Ammon u'Moav here are in Chutz La'aretz, as we see in map Gimel. Ammon u'Moav are in Chutz La'aretz, right? The shaila is, what if you buy land there? Is it chayav in Trumas U'Maisus or not? Now, Kashi say Kumi Rabbi Yasa. Rabbi Yitzchak ben Nachman said, I had difficulty. I asked Rabbi Yasa, what's the shaila? What was Rabbi Shimon Lakish asking Rabbi Chanina? This is a question we had earlier this evening. What was Rabbi Shimon Lakish asking Rabbi Chanina? Leis Ammon u'Moav de Moshe? Weren't Ammon and Moav conquered by Moshe? Now, not all of Ammon and Moav was, but what part of Ammon and Moav was conquered by Moshe? The part which Sichon had previously conquered from Ammon and Moav, right? We said that Moshe was not allowed to conquer Ammon and Moav, but whatever Sichon had taken over, he was allowed to take. He was allowed to take from the Sichon. Okay, the language we use is Ammon and Moav tiharu b'Sichon. They were purified for the conquest of the Jews by Sichon. Okay? So it says the Gemara, Ramona said, Kush Yusei Kumi Rabbi Chagai. I asked this question from Rabbi Chagai. Leis Ammon u'Moav de Moshe. There aren't Ammon and Moav already susceptible to be Jewish lands at the time of Moshe? Says Gemara, no. Leis Ammon u'Moav de Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah. Says the Gemara, there's two there are two Ammon and Moabs. There's one Ammon and Moab which was conquered by the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, okay, and that Ammon and Moab is certainly Chaim and Trumas and Meisers, granted. However, we're talking about the Ammon and Moab which were not ever conquered by Moshe Rabbeinu. They weren't, because they weren't taken by Sichon Og. Nonetheless, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, now not necessarily Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah himself, but the Tanoim, at the time of Elazar ben Azariah, decreed that Ammon and Moab, outside the boundaries of Israel, since they're nearby, are Chaim and Trumas and Meisers. Okay? So therefore we have a Shiloh, a Jew goes to this area and buys land, perhaps he falls under this takana of being Chaim and Trumas and Meisers. Okay? This is Jews who buy land in Jordan. Okay?
But the 12 Shvatim didn't divide that. That wasn't part of their lots, that land. So
it was.
Ammon and Moab?
Which one? The one conquered by Moshe? Yes, it was. That was what went to Reuven, Gad, and Chatzi Menashe. Yeah, sure.
It was further north.
No, it was that whole area, the entire East Bank. Yeah, the entire East Bank, up and down, the entire side. Rabbi Yossi Barbun, so Rabbi Yossi Barbun said, Ksiv, it says, Ki Cheshbon ir Sichon, Cheshbon was the city of Sichon, Melech Amori, who was the king of the Amori, who Nilcham and Melech Moav Rishon, he fought the first king of Moab, the Gomer. Nu'ahada Tzrichol Rabbi Shimon Lakish. And this is the shaila which Rabbi Shimon Lakish was asking. The Ammon and Moab, which is outside Eretz Yisrael, outside the Olid Bavel. Now, this area which you have in the map in Gimel was conquered by the Olid Bavel. What about the Ammon and Moab, which is outside that area? So this is Rabbi Lakish's question. Tiaro b'yad Sichon or lo tiaro. Now, regardless, it's Chaim Trumas and Meis, because either Chaim Trumas and Meis is midaraisa or the Rabbanan, right? The Raisa if it's tiaro b'Sichon v'og or the Rabbanan. But that's exactly a shaila. Tira im timar tiaro. If you're going to say that all the lands of Ammon and Moab, which are known to us, were already made susceptible for kibush at the time of Sichon. Then it's a Torah chiyuv in those lands there. Interestingly, listen, you know what that means? It means if you buy land, according to this, you buy land, which is now owned by Goyim. Let's talk about Moskowitz case. You buy land now owned by Goyim, but it's an area in which only Mitzrayim conquered, then it becomes a chiyuv d'oraisa. That's what Reish Lakish is asking. We don't baskin like that. Reish Lakish's having is that would constitute a chiyuv d'oraisa. Okay? So in Tamar, tiara cheves minatora becomes chay minatora. In Tamar shalo tiara, if you're going to say it was not tier, in other words, that Sichon did not take hold of this, so Petura, it's Patur Midoraisa.
Just explain the term Tihara, Sichon, Lot.
Am Yisrael wasn't allowed to wage war directly with Ammon and Moab because they were the children of Lot. Right. So the only way they were allowed to do it is indirectly. If Sichon and Og had already waged war against Ammon and Moab and taken land, they were allowed to. They're taking that land from Sichon and Og was sanctioned. So that's called Tiher. When there was the middle step, they were taken from the middleman, not directly from Ammon and Moab. So Gemara is saying, if it was originally Ammon and Moab's, and Sichon and Og had never conquered it, then there's no chiyuv d'oraisa there of Trumas and Maasros, because it was never conquered by Olim Mitzrayim. Now if I go and I take it over, I'm still not really conquering. It's my kibush yachim. My going and buying it is not a bona fide active acquisition, and therefore retains the status of Trumas and Maasros Rabbanan. If, however, I say that it was conquered by Olim Mitzrayim, because the was part of the land which is Tier b'Sichon of Og. In other words, Sichon of Og were the middlemen who made it accessible to me. Then, when I buy land, it becomes Chai Midoraisa. Okay. Rabbi Tanchuma said, Ksiva Chel Rosh Vizgarbo Milchama. It says that that go and wage war, be commenced to acquire and wage war, from which we darshan CCS Arzo Chulin Vanecha, that this entire land was made Chulin, in other words, was made permissible for Moshe Rabbeinu to conquer. So therefore, any land which we identify is a strange Gemara, because it sounds like all of Ammon and Moab is Tiara B'Sichon. We know that's certainly not true. We know that some parts of Ammon and Moab were certainly not Tiar B'Sichon V'Og, because Kodesh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu not to wage war against them. Yet our default assumption is that all these lands which are called Ammon and Moab at the time of the Gemara were part of the lands which were Chayav, which were taken over by the middleman Sichon and Og, and therefore if a Jew buys land in those districts, he has to give Trumas and Maasros off his crop. That's what we're saying. Okay? A very big chiddush. Tremendous chiddush. We don't basket this way, but that's what the Gemara is saying. Okay? Right.
The reference in Sefer Megillas Rus to Ammon and Moab.
Yeah.
Specific identifiable area.
It was an area identifiable, right?
As Moab.
That's why what Reish Lakish is saying, it's strange. You know what? I'm assuming Reish Lakish held that the Ammon and Moab in our maps over here are Ammon and Moab which were known to be conquered by Sichon and Og. And the Ammon and Moab which are not known to be conquered by Sichon and Og are either much further away or closer in, actually. And they were obliterated, therefore, at the time of Shivat Zion, at the time when they came back from Bavel. It's not clear. The whole Gemara is murky, but obviously Reish Lakish held that he knew which land was Tier B'Sichon V'Og, and that was the land he was discussing in terms of Trumas and Maasros.
So the implications Megillas Rus talks about
some other area of Ammon and Moab
that was not conquered by Sichon and Og.
Right. And Reish Lakish is not addressing that issue. Rabbi Chuna Boy Meishrei Yavloina. Rabbi Chuna wanted to say that the Yavlona is exempt for all mitzvahs Hadluyas Baret and exempt from Shemitah, etc. Now Yavlona is in the north of the land of Israel. Look at map Aleph for Beis. I don't know which one.
When you see the text, you see that he's not always reading the text that you're reading.
Yeah. Yavlona is right on the fork. I don't know if the fork is the right word, but if you take a look at the north of Eretz Yisrael, where the two zones, which are conquered by Olim Mitzrayim and not by Olim Bavel, fork away from each other, so really there at the hinge is Yavlona. Okay? So the trial is whether Yavlona is part of Eretz Yisrael or not part of Eretz Yisrael. Okay? In map base, you have it's larger. The same idea. Okay? Yavlona is there.
That's what the Javelin.
Javelin, yeah. No, oh yeah, right down there. Sure, yeah. If his estimate here is accurate, then that's what it is. That's what? I don't know where the Banias is. Maybe, but they call it Banias, so I doubt it. But it's probably in that area. Okay. Also, Gabi Rabbi Mona, they came from Rabbi Mona. Amalei, so he said. So Rabbi Chuna, when he wanted to do this, he came to Rabbi Mona. Amalei, and he said, "Halacha chasom." Here's a notice which we want you to sign. Sign it. V'lo kibel lavi mechdam. He wouldn't sign it. The next day, Rabbi Chia bar Madya got up and stood by Rabbi Mona. Amalei said to Rabbi Mona, "Ya'us of that, you did good. Tloch tam you didn't sign." The Rabbi Yonah Avu Chavam, Rabbi Yonah father used to say, "Antoninus Yoav Rebbe." Antoninus gave to Rabbi Yehuda Nasi train out in the Shein 2,000 good fields. The Shein Doshem is fat, so here the Shein means good fields by Risus for sharecropping. That and one among them was the Avlona, and therefore the Avlona is quasi-Jewish, and therefore Necheles, it has, although the crops to go there can be eaten, they don't have the sanctity of Shemitah. Avlona Veres, it can't be worked. Syria, because it's like Syria. So Avlona is like Zone B, the area which was conquered by Mitzrayim and not by Olei Bavel, and therefore one is not allowed to work there during Shemitah. Ubtermina Mises, he had to say that it's exempt from Mises, Mibnei Shu Kesodos Goyim, because now already it seems that the Goyim are the ones working the fields, and when the Goyim work the fields are exempt from Trumas and Mises.
Is it Sodom's Goyim because of the property of the king?
No, it seems like after Rebbe got it, even though Rebbe had been granted the land, Goyim came and took it over. So that's why now it has the status of Sodom's Goyim again.
I was wondering whether the Gemara in fact recognizes the legitimacy of an illegitimate act of a Roman Caesar to take away property from people.
It certainly does.
It did.
Does. Yeah. That's part of the Malchus Dina. Huh? No, that would be enough Kamina if it's Trumas and Mises. Right. Okay? You don't have this. Anything they held on to. Ravuna said, this is the way to read our Mishnah. There are two sections which are Zone B. Zone B is Miksiva Anor, from Ksiva until the river, meaning the Syria, right, the northwestern portion, northeastern portion, and no, not in the Mediterranean. Miksiva ad Hanohar. Nor is the Euphrates. That's Syria. Okay?
It's all the way down here.
What?
Where are you looking?
This is a Nor. Miksiva ad Nor. This is Miksiva ad Nor. They're two separate sections. Miksiva ad Nor is the area which has Beis Gimel Vav in it, and then there's Miksiva ad Amona, which has the Dal next to it. I mean the same wavelength?
Yeah.
Okay, so those are the two areas in which you're not allowed to work during Shemitah, but the crop has no Kedusha. Both of those areas. Okay?
So
and there's an area in the middle which is Mamish Chutz La'aretz.
Okay, so Syria, you had to observe Shevi'is. Of course, it's against Trumas Ma'asaros Rabbanan anyway.
Trumas Ma'asaros is the Rabbanan, and you must not work during Shemitah, but there's no Kedusha Shevi'is on the fruit. Tanya. Ezu Ya'aretz ve'ezu Chutz La'aretz. What's Eretz Yisrael? What's Chutz La'aretz? Kosher Shafei miturei Omna v'lifnim. Anything which is flows down from Turei Omna on the inside Eretz Yisrael. Miturei Omna Chutz and Turei Omna, and towards the outside is Chutz La'aretz. Now what it means is, if you look at map Aleph, you'll see there are various possible border lines on the north. There are several possibilities. One of them is where you see Beirut, That's the lowest possibility. And then when you go a little bit higher, you see Tripoli. And then you have
There's Tripoli.
Tripoli. Slightly below this.
Libya.
No, there's a Tripoli in Lebanon, too. Yeah. And Ras Shaka, whatever that is slightly below that. That's another possibility for the northern boundary. Then you have the Banias, another possibility. There's a different Banias than our Banias. And then you have Jebel Akra, which is the southern boundary of Turkey. So in all these places, wherever you see these various different possibilities, there's a mountain, and the mountain ridge slopes, and its ridge runs east-west, and the slopes are there from the north and on the south of the range. So the Gemara is saying that on the south side of the ridge is that which flows from the south side of the ridge, on the south side of the ridge, is Eretz Yisrael. That which flows on the north side of the ridge is Chutz La'aretz. Okay? So am I making myself clear? Yes, Dr. Spinell?
North side of the ridge is Eretz Yisrael.
No. Yeah.
The south side is Eretz
South side is Eretz Yisrael. Okay? Yeah. They're very simple.
This little print, so that you have 5 different sheets as to
So where the northern part of Eretz Yisrael is.
the Hor HaHor.
Right. But this is not the Hor where Aaron is buried.
No?
No.
Oh my God, I didn't think they
That's an Amon. Yeah. Yeah, this is a different Hor. Hor is a geographic description of any mountain which has another mountain on top of it. Hor HaHor. Okay. Learn something new every day, right?
By the minute.
So now, what about Anisu Shevi'is? This is a very weird Gemara because there are no islands there. But what about the islands?
Yeah, right.
What about the islands off the coast? So it's nowhere near. You draw an imaginary line, and a map Aleph you have the line drawn from one of the horrors, from the most southerly horror. You see the imaginary line being drawn from horror to Nachal Mitzrayim. So that's from Beirut to Wadi El Arish. See that? So any island which is on the inside of that line is Eretz Yisrael. Now there are no islands there, so I'm not sure why the whole discussion. Maybe it's for international fishing waters. Yeah, maybe. But
Maybe there were islands then.
maybe there were.
There's been so many earthquakes and...
Yeah, could be.
I don't know.
Okay. So anything which is on the inside, anything which is outside of the line is Chutz La'aretz. Rabbi Yehuda says has a completely different outlook, and this is a very famous sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. It's in the Bavli as well. Is that when you draw a line outwards from Eretz Yisrael? In other words, you draw a line. If I can draw on this map. I have permission.
So it steams anyway.
Do whatever you want. So you draw a line out like this, according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda was a very big land grabber. So he said you draw a line out like there, and you draw a line out like this. And anything until you hit the Atlantic, which falls between those two lines, is part of Eretz Yisrael.
You're drawing a line all the way
Yeah. That's Warren Gittin, you remember that. Right. Gibraltar. Yeah. Yes. All that would have the halach of Eretz Yisrael, according to Rabbi Yehuda. But not America. It stops at the ocean. Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda is saying. Rabbi Yehuda says, isn't Rabbi Yehuda here? Rabbi Yehuda, Merkoshu Kneged Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael. Shneim Ar Gvul Hayam, Vayolachem Hayam Gadol Gvul. On the seaside, the great ocean will be your boundary. Ugvul Shabbat and the boundary on the sides. You view it as if a line is drawn from Kafluria. Kafluria is one of the definitions of Hor HaHor. See that Beirut? Where's Kafluria?
Yeah, right there. Right above Beirut is Kafluria. Okay? You draw a line from Kafluria, Ado Kianis to the ocean. Minachotayim from Vadi El Arish to the ocean. Minachut Lifim, anything which is between these two lines, Eretz Yisrael. Minachut Lachut Chutz La'aretz. Okay?
Even Jabotinsky.
Even Jabotinsky, yes. It was a German term for it. I don't like using German terms, but it was the 11th round, right? It was looking for a living room.
He was going out to
Okay.
the water.
What?
He was going out to the water.
Yeah, but he's going further. There's a lot of Italy.
When they find oil there.
Yeah, that's right. I'm Rabbi Yisrael Bishunim.
He was claiming part of Italy and Sicily.
Yeah. Corsica. I'm Rabbi Yisrael Barshunim. The Shiagiwa Goliyos L'Turi Amna. Eventually, by Kibbutz Goliyos, they're going to come down through the north of Israel, and when they get to Turi Amna, they're going to sing song. Matam, why? What Pasuk teaches us this? Tashuri, you will sing Merosh Amonah from the heads of the mountain range of Amonah. Okay, now let's talk a little bit more about Syria. Going to the next Mishnah. Have we done a blot even tonight? Not even, huh?
Yeah, just
Oh,
the 10 lines.
Osim B'Tolish B'Suria. By the way, this Sunday we're going to be learning. Okay, sorry. Osim B'Tolish B'Suria. We have to. We're allowed to work with grain, with harvest crop in Syria during Shemitah. But not while it's still attached to the ground. Since the whole concept of Shemitah in Syria is the rabbinic, so they only are machmir when stuff is still connected to the ground. But once it's severed, you can work with it. Okay. Therefore, darshin you can thresh, vizorin and winnow, vidorchin and press grapes, umarmim and make bundles. Avalokotzi by now allowed to harvest velobotrim nor to harvest grapes, lomoskin nor to harvest olives. Klal lomar Rabbi Akiva, general principle stay by Rabbi Akiva, kosher kayotzibo mutar b'Eretz Yisrael, anything which is where we're allowed to do it in Eretz Yisrael via shinui, which is certain things we're going to discuss much later in the Masechta. Hosting Yisrael Syria, you can do it in Syria even without a shinui. Okay? We don't know what those things are yet. Eventually we'll find out. Ravo said, why is this? Why do they make Syria, why do they ban working in Shemitah during in Syria? So Jews should not go and settle there. Because if they could work there during Syria, they'd all be massive work there during Shemitah. There'd be massive Yeridat to Syria. So to prevent that, they made it also to work there. So it says more, B'tol Shlamut, if that's the case, why are they matter you working when the stuff is already severed from the ground? It says more, Mingo, which is the same thing like Migo, since Duchame, he sees Ravcha Koriv, only very little profit. In other words, the fact that you can work there, B'tol only, and stuff is severed from the ground gives you very little profit margin. So low enough, the guy's not going to go out there. Now, it's interesting, Ben Forshim saying he'll go out there for a season, but he won't go out there to settle there. So therefore, migrant work he'll do, right, but not for settle. Rabbi Yossi Barbun Ba Kumi Rabbi Muna. Rabbi Yossi Barbun asked for Rabbi Muna. Ma'ali Tchoni Magoy Ba'aretz. Is one allowed to grind grain together with the goy in Eretz Yisrael? Amar Lei, so he said, Masnisa Amar Ashuasa. Our mission teacher said it's prohibited. The Tina we learned Osim Betolush B'Suria of Lo Mechubar. In Syria, you can work with them on that which is separate from the ground, but not that which is connected. So this teaches us in Eretz Yisrael, Filu Betolush also, even in that which is severed from the ground, it's also to work even with a guy. Okay? Makom Shu Nechal, Lo Nevad, a place which is where you're allowed to eat, even though you're not allowed to work, which is like Syria, where you're allowed to eat the crop because the crop is no Kedusha Shevi'is, but not allowed to work there. You're allowed to
There's trumas to my service to
Yes, therefore.
So, wouldn't the term Malkum Shinachal refer
On Shemitah. On Shemitah. With that, there's no Shevi'is attached to the crop. Okay? Ma'ul Askir B'Emto Shom, can you rent your animal to a goy to use to do work there? Rabbi Levi Tzambaraya, which you can't do in Eretz Yisrael during Shemitah, probably because it looks like you're doing the work. Rabbi Levi Tzambaraya, Shal Rabbi Yitzchak Rabbi Ami, yes, Rabbi Yitzchak Rabbi Ami, Vasun, they say it's forbidden. Rabbi Yeshua Yoav Amamaya Pritim. So much so that Rabbi Yeshua used to pay off goyim not to rent his animal during Shemitah. He says, let him just stop. So the Kavnaki says, let him just not accept the rental fees. So he says it's about a case where they would otherwise, take his animal against his will, such as for the king's service, they would press it into service.
It's like the government now is paying hospitals in New York not to hire residents.
Yeah, right.
Same thing. So it says more, now, however, it says more, no, Lav Mishum Nosa, not because he didn't want his animal to work during Shemitah. Ela Shlo Yache Bam Toma Goy, he didn't want his animal to transgress the Isser Yichud with a Goy. Because we learned in Masechta Avodah Zarah that Goyim are suspect on bestiality, right? So therefore, he didn't want to leave his animals together with the Goyim. Never could tell what's going to go on behind closed doors. Okay, but Goyim... Right, stables, yeah. No, same thing, right.
But you didn't rent it.
No, so we're saying that that's not an accurate description of the situation. If we're talking about when we say in our Mishnah that you're not allowed to work on crops which are still connected to the ground in Syria, so if it's talking about crops which grew primarily in the 6th year and then are harvested in the 7th year, afilu b'aretz mutar, you're allowed to work with them even in Eretz Yisrael. If it's talking about crops which grew during Shemitah, now it's subsequent to Shemitah, lachrosh mutar, then the principle, generally speaking, is lachrosh mutar, even in Eretz Yisrael. You're allowed to plow. You're not allowed to harvest, except if you make a shinui. So that should be the parameter. That even certain malachas in the ground are permissible, meaning the malach of charisha, or plowing. So it's more and this is what we're talking about, bepeir shvi'is b'shvi'is, which is obvious. We're talking about Shemitah fruit which grew during Shemitah. And on that, in Syria, you can work with it when it's severed from the ground, but now it's connected. And of course, in Eretz Yisrael, you can't work with it in that scenario under any circumstances whatsoever. Rav Chuna, Azal Tzur, he went to Tzur. V'asrlan hadash geis, and it forbade them to irrigate their fields during Shemitah. Sham Rabbi Yossi v'amar v'yeus. Rabbi Yossi heard this. They said, "I good psak, like it." Hada labim chubari is mashkin beis hashalchim moed v'shvius. You're allowed to irrigate fields during Chol Moed and during Shemitah. Rabbi Yehuda said that was roim shabo. That's talking about a grain field. Here we're talking about a fruit orchard. And a fruit orchard is forbidden to irrigate during Shemitah because it's not necessary. If it's talking about an orchard, you should be allowed to plow. Why aren't you allowed to plow? Orchards, you should be allowed to plow. Well, if it's talking about an orchard, I'm not making myself clear. It's about an orchard, and that's why you're allowed to water it. If you're allowed to water, not orchards, I'm sorry. If you're allowed to water grain fields, so you should be allowed also to plow them. Because watering is a tolada of plowing. What does plowing do? It makes things grow better. So what does watering do? It also makes things grow better. So if you're allowed to water, why aren't you allowed to plow in a grain field? Says the Gemara doesn't answer. you should be allowed to plow, but the Gemara doesn't answer. So he brings down here an answer from the Bavli. That the Bavli says by Shemitah, only Arvos are also not Tolodos. The Arv is Charisha. The Toloda is, the subcategory is watering. Watering is mutter because it's a Toloda. Charisha is also because it's an Arv. Okay? Says the Mishnah further. B'tzolim shiur aleim halacha gimel. Are you with me? B'tzolim shiur aleim gshamim. This is an interesting thing. These are onions which grew during the 6th year. You left them in the ground. And now it rained on them during the 7th year and they grew some more. If the leaves now became blackened, in other words, deep dark green, Asurin, the onion is forbidden because we say part of it grew during Shemitah, obviously. Hariko, if the onion remains a pale green, Harei l'mutarim because it didn't grow at all during Shemitah. Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus, if they can be severed by their leaves, they are prohibited. However, and let me explain what that means. Not severed, but plucked from the ground. If they can be plucked by the ground by their leaves, normally you pluck an onion by the ground, I guess. What do I know? By its bulb. Well, you can pluck them in the ground by its leaves. It means the leaves were fortified during Shemitah. Leaves are fortified during Shemitah means they're forbidden, right? So therefore, you have to be able not to pluck it by the leaves. Then it's okay because it's considered to be still affiliated with the 6th year. Ukenegdon came in Motzei Shvi'is mutar. So the vice versa, what happens if it grew after Shemitah is over for a significant amount of time, then that makes it permissible. Okay? Kini Masnisa. What's our mission talking about? Or this is what our mission talking about. Shchorin Asurin V'Yirukim mutar. Those that are deep black are usur, but those that remain green are mutar because they didn't grow anymore after the 6th year. Rabbi Yosai b'shem Rabbi Yochanan said, "Batzal she'akro, you uprooted an onion, b'shasla, and you replanted it. Became a chitzker. Once you replanted it, became dark. Ma'asel fikula. The fact that it was once ma'aser when it was severed last time makes no difference. Now it's like parim chadashos. It's a new entity, and therefore you have to ma'aser the whole thing afresh, anew." Okay? Rabbi Shimon said, Batzal she'akra v'shaslo, an onion which you uprooted and then replanted, became a she'ishrish, once it takes root, mis'asel fikulo, it's meiser based on its entirety, meaning once it takes root, it's like panim chadashos, it's no longer the previous onion. Even though the previous onion was meiser already, you have to take a full and complete set of meisers from the new onion. Okay? So we see that things which grow out of bulbs, even though they grow from the same thing year after year, or, I don't know, bulbs, the onions replenish themselves, but even they grew out of the bulb before Shemitah and after Shemitah began. If they were fortified enough during Shemitah, they get the halach of Shemitah. They grew enough during Shemitah, we get the halach of Shemitah. Okay? Sha'akram b'shvi'is u'shaslam motzayshis. What happens if you uproot them during Shemitah and plant it again after Shemitah? So Rabbi Zira is going to be a very big issue. Rabbi Zira man became a shrob b'leim achadash mutter. Once the majority of the onion is from the 8th year, it's permissible. Rabbi Yulav, Rabbi Ami, Tarvayin, Armin, Aser. Even if the majority of the onion is from the 8th year, the entire onion remains Aser. Says Umar Masnisa, Pliga Rabbi Ami, Ravasi. Rabbi Lo, sorry. On Rabbi Lo, Rabbi Ami. Armach Mishnah seats are Rabbi Lo, and it's just Rabbi Lo and Rabbi Ami. The time we learned, it's not a Mishnah, it's a Brisa. Zaklau, Hoya, Rabbi Yoshimon, Omer, Mishum, Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Shimon would say this principal name, but same principal name, Rabbi Yoshua, very famous, well-known principle. Kol davar sheish lo matirin. Anything which will eventually become mutar on its own accord. Kigon tevel. Such as tevel, untight, meiser sheni, from which meiser tumas meiser night have been taken. the Vekdesh, which is consecrated, the Chodesh, a new grain. Chachamim did not give a shiur. Why didn't they give a shiur? It's never bought the barov. Why not?
Not only can he ask for
Why is it never bought to me Rabbanan? Because of what Spara? You're going to revoke your smicha.
You probably should. Since it'll be mutter tomorrow anyway, why rely on Bittul Barov? Wait till tomorrow when it's mutter. Chodesh, wait till after the new carbon is brought, right? What's the other cases here? Tevel, take off the Trumas and Meisers, right? And so on and so forth. Anything which is Yesh L'Matir, which tomorrow, or some later date, will be mutter, wait. Be patient. Right? We're assuming it's not something which will get ruined in the interim. So Davar Sheish Matirim is not bought afilu be'elef.
What about Hektish? You can't
Bishoel it. Ella. Kok min b'mino koshu. If it's a min b'mino, it's koshu, meaning it's never batel, no matter how little there is. But shlomin, if it gets mixed into something else, which is not the same type, but no same time, then we go off no same time, the amount of which it gives a taste. The cold over shekel material, anything which is not going to be pitzmil after time, go in truma, utrumas meiser, v'chala v'orla. The truth is, I gave you a bad answer before. Hektish, we don't assume you're going to be shoel on it, because you can be shoel on truma and trumas meiser too. And by hektish you can redeem it. Talk about type hektish is redeemable, as opposed to truma and trumas meiser, not redeemable. V'chala v'orla v'kili hakerem, where there's no eventual heter, no suchachami, but I'm sure there chachami gave a shear. Min b'mino, if it's in its own type. Vishalo b'mino, not suchachami shear min b'mino, which is as long as the majority of mutter stuff becomes permissible. Shlomin, if it's something which is not its same type, knows the time, then you go after 60. So now the kasha is, how can Rabbi Yami and Rabbi Elah say that the vegetable which you replanted in the ground after Shemitah is not batel, it should be batel. It's a davar she'ein lo matirim. There's no way to ever take off the Shemitah status. So when you replanted it and now it grew stronger, let it be mevatel, the prohibition of Shemitah. It's a very good question, right? Again, this is davar she'ein lo matirim. There's no way to ever be mutter. So ever let the majority growth of the next year cancel the minority growth of Shemitah year. The first time. No, then it would have been this small an onion. Now it's this large an onion, so why is it not bought the barov? That's the Gemara's kasha. Let the asa part be batel in the mutter part. You're right. Stuff which came asa, but let it be batel.
But it started out being awesome. So.
Oh, the Gemara is going to give that answer. But you understand the Gemara's question, okay? So it says more. First he gives a different answer. It says the Gemara, Amrulo, they said, Varei Shevi'is shein l'matir. Oh, there's part of the question still. Shemitah, it's a davar shein l'matir, because you can't be matir later on. Or Chami yet said it's not batel. Armlem loim amart b'shvi she'eno seres koshu ela b'biur. That which Shemitah asers, no matter how little of Shemitah is, even 1 in 1,000, is by things which are susceptible to biur, which at the time of year, when the animals no longer possess any in the field, you can leave it outside on your doorstep and renounce it. So yechlo matirin. What's the heter you can use for it? Do behefker, make it biur, right? There it's oseres koshu, el b'biur. Abachila, but if it gets mixed in a way which is not do with the beer, but rather it's an inherently forbidden substance. Shemita, it's takabata b'nosintan. So says Maramai, Avni lo Rabbi Ami, Elo Rabbi. Why do Rabbi Elo Rabbi therefore say it's also? Pasin lo be'eruvin. They say, you know what?
When is it permissible? When is a davar she'lo materin batel? When it's in the taroives, and this is what you said. When it's mixed up, have a begidulin, but here in growth, the earlier growth doesn't mix with the later growth. No, it's not constant taroives. Chaymeru, it's more severe. If you have an onion which grew a kilayim with grapes, and then he replanted it, even if you added several amounts to it, it's forbidden. That which grows does not make the iser mutter again. Alright, I think we'll stop here for tonight. We'll pick up here again tomorrow night, where I know we're in the middle of something. We're going to speak about davar she'lo materin tomorrow night, but it's late, so we'll stop here.
Because it's not a tarovis.
Right, it's not a tarovis. In order for it to say it's mubato, it has to be a tarovis. And here it's not a mixture, it's growth on top of growth. That's Rabbi Zira said.
It's a layer. Literally, onions grow in layers.
Right. The layers are not, they don't mix with each other.